If you are a child now, or if you were a child ever, you are, of course, welcome in this space. Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Resendez, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at UUC Phoenix. And I just noticed something, and it's a shift in our community that I want to take a moment to honor, is that today we have more high schoolers than any other age group of kiddos. And that's pretty phenomenal considering they're coming up on fall break. A lot of them are about to or have just taken midterms. And it's also the height of a lot of sports season. So thank you all for showing up for your community. We like seeing you, and we're glad you're here, and we're glad that this is a place you want to come. Thank you, thank you. Okay, a few announcements. One, if you are, or have a family member who is, or take care of a person who is between the ages of 12 and 14, and you would like them to experience coming of age through UUCP, our first introductory meeting is on this Friday from 5 to 7 p.m., and there'll be an email going out with announcements, but your family needs to be registered for children's ministry in order for you to get those announcements. Also, this session is going to be about how we know ourselves and how we think about ourselves and self-identify, and we want to invite everyone. So if you're interested in coming as an adult, as someone who isn't attached to a coming-of-age kiddo, please feel free to come. Email me so I know you'll be there so we can prepare enough chairs, but you are more than welcome to join us. So that's number one, is Friday, coming of age. Number two, everyone who is interested in or has been volunteering with children's ministries, please join us on Saturday from 10 to 2:30. That is a very long stretch of time for a very long training in which I will give you lots of textbooks and lecture at you the entire time. Luckily, Benji will be there and teach us some songs, and some other people will do things that aren't just lecturing. But it is very important that we all learn how to keep our community safe, and that we work on what our pedagogy is around why children exist in this community and why they exist in general. So that's this coming Saturday from 10 to 2:30. If you can only make part of it, come let me know. That's great. And then lastly, after service next Sunday is a session called, originally it was called What the Hell is Children's Ministry? I think we changed that. It's something like that. But it's the whole overview and orientation for the year, all of our programming lists so you can hear what's going on when and how different programs are working. And that's so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of next week, we have events every single day. Okay? Great. Give me a second to recenter myself, and then I'll tell you a story. Ani was born in a village in a very, very cold and frozen place. And half of that year, it was light out all day long. There was no sunset. There was no sunrise. There was just sunshine the whole time. And many people think that that means it was wonderful and great, but we live in the desert, and we know that too many days of too much sunshine makes you too grouchy. But luckily, where Ani lived, half of the year it was dark. Very, very dark. And as a young child, a toddler even, Ani would wander outside in the dark, be it morning or afternoon or night, and look up at the sky and see the most amazing thing. Purples and greens and whites, sometimes running across the sky like a river, sometimes in stripes streaking back and forth. And Ani was amazed. And this is something that didn't just exist beginning when she was a toddler. It had existed for thousands and thousands of years before, so her community had stories about it. And sometimes the stories affected the way people would treat her. She would be out wandering underneath the sky so shiny and beautiful, and someone would come and say, "Ani, come inside, come inside. That's a bad omen, something is happening, come in, be safe." Or someone would say, "Ani, Those are the ancestors. You have to talk to them, yell them your wishes, tell them what you want. And they would yell and shout and shout. And other people would say, when we see it, you have to bring it gifts. And they would lay out food and blankets and everything outside under this beautiful shining sky. And now, Ani thought all of those things were interesting, but that there was something missing. Because the sky was beautiful to look at, but when she was alone and could make herself be still and settle her breath, she not only saw the aurora borealis in the sky, but she could hear it. And if you hold your hand to your ears and squeeze tight so that your fingers make a popping noise and a scratching noise and almost a shing shing at the same time, and do it kind of slow, that's what she could hear. And on particularly cold nights, that shing shing would sound like music, like a wind chime. Ding, ding, ding. And she would try to tell the grown-ups in her little toddler ways, no, but as we often do with the littlest ones, no, come on, hurry up, let's go inside, we have the next thing to do. As a lot of people do, Ani grew up. And as she got older, she started to hang out with the artists. And the artists saw the beauty in the sky and tried to repeat it in the fabric and in paintings and in music. And they would have these huge bacchanalian parties all day long, 24 hours straight, celebrating the colors in the sky, making so much noise. And Ani enjoyed that. But she would say to her friends, there's more. It's not just the colors. It's not just the shimmering. It's a sound. And her friends would be like, oh, what did you have to eat? And are you saying that the sky isn't beautiful enough? Are you saying we have to look deeper and further? Just enjoy what's there and celebrate it, and just know that those colors are there for us to create more. And Ani agreed that the art was important and the beauty was important, but that there was something more. So she would often find herself wandering off from the party and looking up to the sky and listening for that sound. That crackle, that dry, that ching, ching. As she got older, she got very busy. And honestly, on those days and days and days that were dark and dark and dark, she didn't even look up at the sky. There was just too much to do. And everyone around her was doing the same thing. Oh yeah, it's always like that. It's been like that for thousands of years. No worries, whatever. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And she would try to remind herself to stop and listen, but it was so hard to make time. And it was hard to remember the sound. And it was hard to remember if it was true, and if she had really ever heard it. When she was an old woman, she spent a lot of time sitting inside because it was very cold where she lived. And she didn't have so much busy work to do. And she was done creating art for a time, and she'd do it once in a while, but it didn't fill her days and nights like before. And toddling out in the cold didn't sound fun either. So she would sit. But she was a highly regarded elder, and lots of people would come visit and talk to her, and she would tell them stories. And sometimes she would just talk and talk. And it was just a way to be part. She wasn't getting anything accomplished. She wasn't focusing everyone or being the inspiration to the community. It was just a way to be part. And it was fairly peaceful. But there was one little boy who would always come and sit right by her and listen to her. Like, do you have any stories today? Do you have any stories today? And she would try to think of stories to tell him. And she would tell him all sorts of things about the time she went to the grocery store, about the shoe she lost, about whatever she could remember. And he loved her stories, and she knew that he specifically loved her stories. So she wasn't surprised one day when he came running in and said, Miss Ani, come, I listened, I heard, listen, come. And she was like, oh dear, okay. She got on her coat, she got on her blanket, she put on her boots and went and followed. And what she found outside, a little further from the village, was tons of wires and boxes and electronics, and she wasn't unfamiliar with these things. She had a computer, but she didn't know why they would be all laying out. And she walked up to some of the people, and the little boy said, "This is Miss Ani, I told you so." And the man said, "Hi, Miss Ani, I told you so. My name is Dr. Such and Such." And turns out Dr. Such and Such was a researcher. And so Miss Ani had found herself in a time of life with the scientists and those who observe. And she said, what are you observing? What are you studying here?" And Dr. Such and Such said, "Well, what we have found is that if we hook up a receiver to receive very, very low frequencies while the aurora borealis is shining, we can hear..." And before he could say the rest of her sentence, she looked at him. A huge smile came on her face. She looked at the little boy, and she burst out laughing so hard. And it was a laugh about being funny. It was a laugh of amusement. It was a laugh of release. It was a laugh of knowledge. And it was a laugh of validation. That what she remembered, that sound from a long time ago, was truly real and was there. And so she said, "Yes, yes, tell me, you can hear them." And he said, "Yes, but you'll have to put on these headphones." And she said, "I might, but you don't have to." And so they walked together out a bit further where there were less people, and she put on the headphones, and he stopped and looked up, and they settled their breath, and together they listened to the ruff and crackle and shing, 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 and felt the magic of listening to something together. Thank you.